as I said, I'm excited about this because I learned so much about from the class that I attended on suicide. And I think that's a really important thing, that we keep on refining our tools, right? There's going to be some stuff that came out from some of the techniques in this class that I realized that Madeline could use with this one lady that she helps every week. You know, so it's something that, and that was just a few months ago that we talked about Madeline's situation and what could she do. So each time that the Lord presents an opportunity to enlarge our skills, I think we need to take advantage of it and invest in our own ministries, in our own person, because I get depleted and my finite knowledge is not sufficient. Right? And so we need to take advantage of the knowledge that each one of us has about different topics and their experience, and also take advantage of some of the information that gets to us in the secular world, right? And that's one of the reasons I'm encouraging people to do these classes, and their information that they receive from the few little things that we can eke out, because there's a lot of other sources in the world, especially on the internet today. If you guys see a video that is something that enlarges your abilities, that to me is sufficient to count. You know, I don't care if you have a CEU certificate, but if you see a class or whatever, and you give me, when we do our renewals, give me the link and maybe a summary of what you took out of the class, just a line or two, to me that's sufficient to count for your continuing education, right? One man asked me about a book. Well, a book is not technically a class unless it's, you know, unless it's a textbook. So if you do a book and you want to present that to the group, I don't have to be the only one doing the talking. And I try to schedule other speakers, because I'm a limited person and you get tired of me, right? Yeah, you do. Don't, can we get something else, right? So, to do a class, I would education hours. Okay, so again, shining the light on suicide. What is suicide? Suicide is defined as death caused by self-directed injurious behavior with intent to die as a result of the behavior. So if you notice, this is a definition. I got these graphs from the National Institute of Health, Mental Health. So these are definitions, mental health definitions. And if you notice, with intent to die as a result of the behavior. So they don't technically consider a death when you accidentally overdose as suicide, right? If you accidentally get asphyxiated. Now, if you go into the garage and shut the door and turn on the car, that is intentional, right? And this is not a really happy topic, so I'm sorry about being so direct.
Over the years,
Is a potentially injurious behavior with intent to die as a result of the behavior. A suicide attempt might not result in injury.
Half a bag of popcorn. You mix it together.
Did somebody mute? Because I'm hearing people talk in the background.
And you mix that into your negative.
Okay, so another change, I think that we are in the mental health field. We in the past, especially some of us that are a little bit older, have referred to someone who takes their own life as committing suicide. And now the new mode, you know, how terms and definitions and how we call ethnic groups is always changing. They're now referring to it as died by suicide, being that the word committed kind of implies blame and shame and guilt, and also sin, right? And it has previously, taking your life has been a crime. Now, how do you going to incarcerate someone that has taken their life? I really don't know, but it was a crime for centuries, right? So, and it's also believed in Christian circles that people who die by their own hand will go to hell. So that is a traditional Christian religious belief. I don't know. I've never held that belief personally. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with where someone has extrapolated that from the Bible. Share it with me. But well, I don't know if it's just Catholicism, because I've heard Baptists say that too, or former Baptists. Right. Yeah, from many denominations. So it is generally a broad, I think, it is specifically, I know Catholic, right? I do know Catholic, but it's a broad tradition that is held in Christian circles. But I have not found a scriptural basis to actually say that.
Could it be an interpretation? I think on the Ten Commandments, doesn't it say, thou shalt not murder?
Right.
And killing is self-defense, I think.
Right. So, I mean, and that is,
maybe that's where it came.
it could be that.
Yeah.
And it might have something to do with Judas taking his own life and being condemned. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And there is, you know, from the commandment, the 10 Commandments that says, thou shalt not kill. I mean, there are denominations like the Mennonites and the Amish who will not participate in the military, right?
Right. Right.
But, you know, so you have to respect people's doctrines and their convictions, right? But it is thought that people, there's a blame, there's a stigma from people who do try to end their lives on their own hand, okay? So I'm going to give you some terms. You don't have to know them, memorize them. I don't, you know, fancy words and categories and, you know, medical terms. I mean, it's not essential that you know that kind of thing, but it's how they identify it. So when you're thinking of taking your life, or thinking about it, considering it, or planning suicide, that is referred to in the mental health field as suicidal ideation, ideation, okay? There is a passive suicidal ideation, and that occurs when someone wishes they were dead or wish they could die without any plan. And if you guys are actually interested in some of the definitions to hold on to, I can copy and paste some stuff in email.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Okay. So that's passive, when you're wishing and you're thinking, but you don't have a plan. An active suicidal ideation is not only thinking about it, but having the intent. Now, we can think about it. I just am really tired of this. I wish I was not here anymore. And sometimes we all wish we weren't here anymore, right? But it's having the intent, and there is a plan how they will die by suicide, okay? In the mental health field, there is a manual called the Diagnostic Manual of Mental Disorders, and it defines a suicide attempt as a self-destructive act deliberately carried out with the expectation of death, considering suicidal behavior as a condition independent of depression and other mental disorders. So the mental health field is doing research to try to classify a suicidal behavior as a disorder. I didn't give you the criteria. It's still being researched over the last two DMSs, I think they call it, they've been checking it out, but they're trying to say that there is an actual disorder separate from having depression or other mental illnesses that could tend to lead people to suicide. And previously, suicidal ideation attempts and successful attempts have only been defined associated with mood disorders or mental disorders, okay? So that's the limit, I think, of the technical jargon that I'm going to give us. And I'm going to talk about, first of all, prevention. Because I think that's one of the, preventing, they want us to go to the doctor to prevent, not after the fact treat our health, right? So prevention, hope, action, and crisis centers, okay? Hope, give hope, take action, and access crisis centers. And I'm going to give you a couple of numbers, and we can write them down on your notes at the end. For the crisis centers, the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, you can simply dial in the United States 988. Just like we dial 911 for emergency, you dial 988, and all over the country you can access a prevention hotline. And there is also a number, 1-800-273-TALK, okay, which is the numbers 8255. So that is something to keep handy, because we don't want to take the responsibility when we come across someone with trying to do it all by ourselves, right?
That's actually something I save in my phone. Like I text Dave as a contact. That way it's readily available. Because I mean, I'm not a numbers person, so I forget everything.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah. So, and I also keep, because I'm in Macomb County, the Macomb County Crisis Hotline number pasted onto my computer. It's not in my phone. I used to have it on my voicemail, but stopped getting so many calls. So, or something happened. I changed phones or something. All right. So hope. When we give hope, we can tell people that suicide is not inevitable. You don't have to choose that option. There are other options, and as Christians, we can present hope through God. When we have God active in our lives, we know, we've all experienced it, that he can turn our situations around. Absolutely, okay? And so it's not, once you've got your mindset on that, or that's entered into your scope of vision, it's not the only option. There are other options. Discussing suicide is key to prevention. There's a misconception that bringing it up will give someone the idea to take their life. And it's an uncomfortable thing, right? When you have a crisis in your family and people, a death even, and people don't know how to approach you about it, they kind of just avoid you, right? And they just shy away because it's awkward and they don't know what to do. So it's not out of order to say, I'm concerned about you. Are you okay? And it talks about using the word. I don't know if I was thinking about looking up other synonyms for taking your life, but are you considering suicide? Right? If it's you that's having this attack, you want somebody to stand in the gap for you, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. Okay. And then, so we're trying to inspire hope that there is another solution. This isn't the only answer. Action, start a conversation with people, provide support, and directing them to help that they might need. There's actually evidence that talking about suicide reducing the access to means of self-harm and support and following up reduce the attempts. And then the crisis centers, they can have immediate counsel, They're accessible 24/7. You don't have to go into a place. They provide interventive support. They'll connect you to local services, especially if you have if you're in Wayne County or Oakland County. They have their crisis lines, and there's other volunteers and religious counseling lines too. And one of the things about these volunteers or paid people, they are trained. Okay, I am not an expert. I don't have any technical certificates. And if I take it upon myself to be the only person intervening, I am opening myself up to legal consequences. Yes, I'm making myself liable. I'm opening up myself to legal consequences. Okay. Now, I wasn't going to talk about statistics because they are kind of boring, but I think it's important for us to have a clear picture of how prevalent suicide is in our society and worldwide. In the 10 years between 1999 and 2019, suicide rates increased 33%. Okay. And there was a slight decline between 2019 and 2020. And that's like a total of 46,000 deaths. In that year between 2019 and 2020, there was a slight decrease. But during the whole decade previous, there was a 33% increase. Yes, ma'am.
Are you using the charts now, or you just?
No, but I'm going to get to them. Okay. All right. So there is one, in this time, one death by suicide every 11 minutes.
Wow.
Okay. So according to the Centers for, were you raising your hand, Doreen? No, you're just, okay. I just saw a movement there, so I want to make sure that I get everybody. And the people. Hello, Margot. It's nice to meet you.
It took me time to get in. I forgot. I mean, I was trying to get in. I had to find my password and all of that, but thank you. Nice to meet you.
Okay. So there was just some definitions and introductory stuff that we covered. So according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, regarding the leading causes of death reports in 2020, suicide was the 12th leading cause of death overall in the United States, claiming the lives of 46,000 people, 45,900, okay? It is the second leading cause of death among individuals 10 to 14 and 25 to 34. Horrendous, isn't that? Snuffing people's lives out so young.
Could you repeat that?
Sure. It is the second leading cause of death with people the ages 10 to 14 and 25 to 34.
Thank you.
And then among that intermediate group of 15 to 24, it's the third leading cause of death. And then the ages 35 to 44. I think some of this is on one of these charts too. So you can see it on a graph. It's the fourth leading cause of death from people ages 35 to 44. And it's believed that more access to the internet, TVs, movies, video games, the wide publication of a lot of things in social media gives young people earlier access.
That's true.
To the information. And that, and coupled with increasing pressures, trouble at home, there's abuse, lack of connection to mental health services, helps to pile on that. And we all know, again, as Christians, there's an attack, right?
Definitely.
The enemy tried to snuff out Jesus by killing little children throughout the centuries. And we know he's only about to steal, kill, and destroy. And if he can twist a child, an adolescent, and destroy their lives and cripple them,
Why not?
then they can't be here in this chaplain class being fruitful for the kingdom of God, right?
Right.
Okay. So there were nearly 2 times as many suicides in the United States as there were homicides. Okay. So I'm going to pull out this circle figure, finger 1. Oh, you can't see it. It doesn't do that. It's not doing that. I don't know why it's not showing it. Okay. But I'll mail this to you in your certificate. Maybe if I do this. Can you see that?
Can I ask the question?
Sure, Margot.
How are you?
I'm good.
What's your name again?
Trish.
Okay, Trish. What I want to ask, is it more catered to girls or boys?
Girl.
Generally, males are more likely to successfully end their lives.
Which way is higher?
Excuse me, but could you repeat that?
Which way do they use suicide higher? Drugs, alcohol, jumping over a bridge?
I don't think I have that information.
Okay.
I don't think I have that information. It might say that on the national. Oh, go ahead, Lorraine.
I read somewhere that, men.
Medicine, man, drug.
Well, right, because as far as firearms, more men have firearms, and it will be talking about that men choose more violent methods to attempt to end their lives, so they're more successful.
I have a question. Oh, go ahead.
Some of the stuff you might have questions about, I'm going to cover. So I didn't have an opportunity to make a slide so the people on Zoom could see this graph. But if you take the circle graph and look at it, okay, it shows that, and this is from 2020, in the big blue circle, 12.12 million adults had serious thoughts about suicide.
Is it 2020?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, this was the information, that's latest publication, even though it's 3 years later, they don't have a lot of stuff out. So that just tells you that it's not uncommon, and people don't, we know the enemy does plant things and there's other different feelings, but it's not uncommon, right? 12.12 million had serious thoughts about suicide. Okay, the intermediate blue circle, all right, here we have 3.2 million people. Of that 12.12, 3.2 made some plans. Okay, and you see an intersection of a circle, and it's a darker blue circle. I think you can. All right, but again, you guys are, I'm going to mail these with your certificates. It says 1.2 million adults actually attempted suicide. And of that 1.2, 920,000 adults had made plans, and 283,000 had made no plans, but they did make the attempt. Okay, so an attempt means it was not necessarily carried out. All right.
I can see some of these statistics. I get it. I just want to. I'm kind of curious. 12.2 million adults had serious thoughts of suicide. How did we know that?
Actually, a lot of doctors' offices and stuff like that screen for that. Like,
Right.
You don't realize it, but like there's a lot of.
So those are
That-
the,
that's
so that's one of the things that
There's
might,
probably a lot of people that
They
have
report
they don't know about.
right. So they do research, they take, like Elise said, doctor's offices,
My doctor's office.
they always ask about different things. And so it's
You can
not,
assume this is a baseline. It's probably way more.
Oh, absolutely.
It's just a baseline.
it is absolutely a baseline, because how many people don't have access, don't talk to anybody about it, and they don't have any way to gather that data, right?
Right.
So these are just people who have answered the questions at doctor's offices, or filled out a survey, or when they've done something getting medical treatment, that they've talked to a therapist about it.
Also, just like a side note, but like in 2020, suicide attempts and everything else along with it went up, especially with like school age kids, because a lot of people who would want to attempt suicide in the past didn't, because they didn't have opportunity, but because during 2020 for COVID, there's so much isolation
Right.
that actually opened the doors for increased suicide attempts and success.
Right, because if you're restricted from seeing people, you're more prey to those hopeless thoughts. You're more prey to the attack of the enemy. You don't have people that are around you all the time that could intervene or come upon you, like Linda had talked about in our class, in the certificate class. You know, if she hadn't come upon a certain person at a certain time, they would not be here today, right?
There's so many people that were like home alone or
Right.
whatever, that there was opportunity. And also, actually, teachers are big reporters of these sort of like
Right,
things
right. And
as
if you're
well,
not,
if they didn't have the, you know.
the interaction to see, right? So, yeah,
Can I say something?
sure.
Okay, my grandson, he attends Ferndale Elementary School. They're setting up a program where soon as the children, well, I won't say a program, but when they come into class, they talk to each child and they say, how was your day? How was your weekend? How are you feeling today? Are you feeling a certain way? So now they're trying to implement emotion in school. They're trying to find out what the triggers is for children, the way that they feel, so that they can kind of depress the issue and try to find out what it is. And they said they're going to start doing it to some other schools too, to help give them more insight of their behavior, and it could dictate more towards their mental health.
Okay. Yeah, that's important. You know, we need medical intervention. We need a lot of hands-on to help deal with this situation. Okay, so among adults across all age groups, the prevalence of serious suicidal thoughts was highest in young adults 18 to 25, which is 11.3%. Okay. So why don't we look at, let's see. I'm trying to see if this is, I don't have these numbered. I think I got them mixed up. Oh no, that's the second. Okay. So I'm looking at the past year prevalence of suicide, all right? And you see different lines of different age groups and male and female. And overall, 5% of the adults 18 or older reported a suicide attempt in that year. Okay. And among all age groups, the prevalence was highest in young adults. You can see the biggest graph, the biggest line, 18 to 25, 1.9. And you can't see a little blue line on the side talks about little lines among race and whatever. And among adults 18 or older, the prevalence of suicide attempts in the past year, in that year, was past year, which was 2020, who reported who had two or more races, whose ethnic group was two or more races, had a higher rate of suicide overall of adults. Okay. Okay, so then.
Okay, forgive my ignorance. What is NH and LPO?
That's Native Hawaiians and Pacific Islanders. Okay. Yeah. So if you want to look at that, you can see when we have these by ethnic groups and races, those are all age groups, but they have it broken down. And really the main thing I wanted to distinguish, if you look at it, overall the suicide rate was 0.5 thousand, and among females it was the attempts at suicides. So women attempt suicides more than men.
Oh,
Let's
I
just-
thought it was the opposite.
No, they attempt suicides more than men. It's actually for every, where did I have it written down here? For every one male attempt, there are 3 female attempts. However, for every female successfully carried out suicide attempt, right, a death by suicide, there's 3.3 men that actually complete suicide. All right.
You also have to count that there's more females in the world than there are males. So.
Right. There are more females in the world. That's true. Okay. So I think again, the statistics are kind of a boring kind of thing, but it's kind of these different graphs can help us get a clear picture, a pictorial image of where people are being attacked. Okay. Oh, and there's also an interesting statistic that's not on a graph that says that 77% of those dying on their first attempt of taking their life are male. And that is possible reasons, as we were talking about, as men do not typically discuss things as much as women, right? They're more isolated. We still have, especially among mature males, you know, there's that image that we don't talk about it, where we have to be tough, right? So they don't share their feelings as much as women do typically. And also because the methods that they choose are more violent, it's more probable that they're going to complete it. And then an interesting, is it pouring? Good thing we're inside. I hope no one has their window open. There was a study of 4,000 hospitals of patients practicing self-harm.
Yes, I was a sitter for Beaumont Hospital.
Okay,
They were coming in cutting right here,
right.
and they were bulimia and anorexia along with that.
Okay, so I mean, that is another avenue, but among those people that have been hospitalized, there was a study showing that the ones that did those type of things, the men also had a higher level of suicide intent than women. So again, we talked about the difference in the communication. And this is not only trends in the United States, it's a trend worldwide, basically. And if you want to take a look at the suicide rate by age group from 2020, who has the highest suicide rate? Okay,
Oh my gosh.
but those are male.
Can I say something for a minute?
Sure, Margot.
Okay, in the Bible, I don't know actually where it's at, but in the Bible it states that during the time back then that there were people that were inflicting wounds on themselves as well. And then they showed how it diverse and it came back that they were cutting with rocks on their wrists too to inflict pain.
Right, and that was also part of their worship of idols, right? So we can see that spiritually, probably now we can't document this by research, but spiritually, because when you have, you have idols in your life, these demons are motivating, and you're opening yourself up to you're opening yourself up to that. So there is some talk about that in Christian circles. So if you're looking at the rates, you can see on each category, the right side, the dark blue are males in the age groups, and on the left side, the moderately blue is women. And you can see that, compare the highest rate of suicide, the age groups, and comparing it male to female. Okay, so So now we're going to go on to causes and concerns. Okay. Most often suicidal thoughts come from the feeling of being unable to cope with what is a seemingly overwhelming situation. And we're using the seemingly because there's a lot of times we feel like we're engulfed, right? But when we get a little bit of clarity, we can see that it's not so overwhelming. And when we're dealing with the young people, right, especially adolescents, with all the things they're going through and becoming adults and the hormones, I mean, some of the stuff that seems trivial to them, I mean, to us is overwhelming, right? So it's not really the actual level of crisis, but it's the perception, right? And when you have that overwhelming feeling, I can't cope, what am I going to do with this? We want to get out from under it. I mean, who likes to be under pressure? Who likes to be under pain, right? Mental or physical, okay? But without hope, they mistakenly feel that or think that suicide, taking your life, is an option, is a solution. And they have a tunnel vision that this is the only way. So that's one of the things about communication, is that we can show, you know what, there is another way. There is another way, and we can help you find it. The people in these crisis lines can help you find it. A therapist can help you determine. That's why when we talk to people, we can see things more clearly and see that there's not just one solution to our problems, right? Also, causes and concerns. If you have a family history of suicide, you're more likely to make an attempt. And this, they don't know if it's a genetic link, there's an actual genetic link connected to suicide, or if it is a genetic link to mental health, or if it's just from a learned environment. But they do have observed that if that's been prevalent in your close or near family, that it influences you. Now, again, the precise cause isn't specifically known, but they tend toward overwhelming feelings and not knowing how to fix a situation, right? That's the whole thing. We want to fix it, but we don't know how to fix it. And this is what we think, this is going to fix it. All right. Risk factors. If someone has attempted suicide before, feeling hopeless, experiencing a stressful life event, and those could be good situations. It could be having a baby or getting married, right? Not just losing someone or a fire. And if you have substance abuse problems, those are 4 risk factors. A previous attempt, if you're feeling hopeless, worthless, agitated, socially isolated, right, or lonely. In the group of the statistics and in these notes somewhere, it talks about, and I think it's probably later on, it talks about people live in rural areas have a higher suicide or attempted suicide rate than people in city.
Probably isolation again.
Right, and so we know how the enemy works. He, even in a pack of wolves, right? They separate a small sheep and get it out, and by yourself, and you don't have the support, right? So support is really important, and understanding too. Whatever people are going through, yes, Monica?
Hi. Yeah. No. Did you want to finish that? I was just gonna mention that, like, when you were talking about stats, I used to volunteer for the Macomb County Crisis Center, and my first 5 calls, it was such an extensive training, and the first 5 calls were suicide calls. And in one of my trainings, what they had mentioned is, one, if there's a parent that commits suicide, 1 out of 4 kids, or 1 of 4 of their children, will commit suicide. It's such a...
Or attempt, or both, either.
Will commit. Yeah.
Okay.
Will actually follow through with the action.
Okay.
That, that's, of course, that was years ago, but I mean, it was like a really high number.
Right.
back
And
then. So I'm sure that now it's probably even worse.
right. I would have to say because that things are just deteriorating in society. So, okay.
Yeah, that was my hand was raised from a
From
while.
before I just saw it on the other screen. So, like I said, my
Yeah,
notes.
so I'm sorry for interrupting that, but yeah, I was
No,
just,
but it's a good thing for you to mention, and I have my notes here to keep me on track. So,
okay. All right, thank you.
all right. So we have a previous attempt. You know, if you've had a previous attempt and you're feeling hopeless, worthless, agitated, socially isolated, or lonely, that's a risk factor, right? A stressful event like losing a loved one, including loss by suicide, as Monica mentions, participating in military service, going through a breakup, financial or legal problems, being bullied or discriminated against, acts of racism, violence, substance abuse. Those are examples of events that can to be a risk factor as a stress, experiencing a stressful event. Okay, having a substance abuse problem, obviously to us, right? Alcohol or drug use can precipitate suicide, right? When you're under the influence of alcohol, you have less inhibitions. Alcohol and drugs, especially marijuana, they're depressants, right? They don't help you feel better, right? And when you are using substances, whatever substance it is, you have less inhibitions, and so it kind of removes our mental barrier to be reckless, to take risks. Yes, Lorraine.
If you're drinking too much and you're drunk, and you decide to kill yourself, is that a choice you make? Is that the drug talking?
It's not you.
There's two different thoughts, I think, on that. One is like, you know, when you have, if you are inclined toward that type of thinking, right, that's a risk factor that can enhance it, but they don't consider in their statistics if I don't have mental health issues or have not been prone to, thanks, that's a good word. I was searching for my word that helps. Prone to suicidal ideation or attempts, that, you know, you get a thought, you're drunk, oh, go jump over a bridge, right? And you're easily influenced, right? And you did end your life by that act, but it wasn't because of suicidal behavior, technically. Now, if you are depressed and hopeless and you're wanting a way out, and in that you've been thinking I would be better off dead, and you get the thought, and the alcohol or drugs remove that inhibition. Go ahead. Huh?
It intensifies it, don't they?
I was gonna say.
It removed the inhibition, not the feeling.
Oh, got it.
Yeah.
Look at the red, what's the name of that drink? Red Bull gives you wings.
Oh, the caffeine is drink.
Yeah. You know how they show that person's not succeeding, and then they drink Red Bull and it gives you wings, but you do anything you want. Well, that's how alcohol and drugs.
Right. The caffeine kind of gets you agitated in these energy drinks. All right.
This is, I think this applies. This judge who had to sentence that wealthy man in South Carolina who killed his wife and kids, and his drug abuse was so bad. The judge knew him personally. He told him, he said, the drugs is what did this. The person that I know in there would not have done it, but the drugs did it.
Right, because it changes your personality, and it changes who you are. So the person that he knew before,
Right.
not the person that the person became, right? Right. Right. And mental illness does that.
Yeah.
And
he
crisis,
probably was mental.
the crisis does that. So so substance abuse is a risk factor, okay? Suicidal thoughts and having weapons in the home increases risk. mental health, mental illness like depression, PTSD, and other disorders, or family history of mental disorders is a risk factor, okay? See, having a medical condition linked to depression or suicidal thoughts, like chronic disease, chronic pain, terminal illness, that's a risk factor. Identifying in the LGBTQ community, that's an increased risk factor, okay? We know as Christians, it's when we have that disturbance inside, that we're trying to find something besides God to satisfy, that we're not grounded. We know where that motivation is, but these people that are have mental conditions, choosing these alternate lifestyles, whatever, to try to fulfill themselves, they have a disturbance inside. Now, this isn't clinical evidence. This is me as a Christian talking, right? Because we are Christians. That's one of the things that differentiates us from professional counselors. Okay. In some situations, a chaplain may not be free to talk about God things and Bible things and faith, right? But as that's our foundation in our group, we know that the enemy tries to cause turbulence and make us upset and choose destructive behaviors and mindsets, right? So when you're in like the LGBTQ community, you're already not at peace, right? You're not at peace with God. You're already searching for something. And so we know that's one of the factors why it's their number one rate of suicide. Death rate is suicide, all right? And the mental health community and the medical community attributes it somewhat to being in unsupportive or hostile environments. Well, I think more and more today's society is accepting what we consider ungodly lifestyle. So, you know, there's less and less hostility against these different type of behaviors in society. But we know that if we're not supported, if we're not in a safe, secure environment, like being bullied, right? That's another factor, a risk factor to help us move in that direction, incline us toward the direction. Abuse, domestic abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse, that's a risk factor, right? Feeling like a failure, inadequate. I mentioned pregnancy, child abuse, childbirth, and postnatal depression. These hormonal changes increase the risk of depression, which increases the risk of tending toward an attempt to take your life, okay? Cultural pressures. It's not so much in our society, but having a forced marriage, right? There's different cultural aspects that produce pressure that can be a suicidal risk, okay? The risk in children and teenager following a suicide event, because of their changes in their body and their hormones and their emotions, they're more volatile. And so something that might seem minor to us is a major stressor, and it makes them feel hopeless. So that's an opportunity for them to choose an attempt on their life to get out from under it. So the idea of addressing their concerns with the same degree of importance as a terminal illness or a job loss, right? So that's the whole idea, is understanding that what's major to somebody else is important, right? And the understanding. Pardon me. So we empathize with how it feels to have lost something.
I find it kind of, I do anyway, maybe I've lived such a sheltered life. I find it interesting, I guess, to think that a 10-year-old kid, I know children have had a lot of difficulties in families, and I get that, but I find it kind of hard to imagine that a 10-year-old kid is actually capable of making a decision to kill themselves. How is that really suicide? It doesn't seem to me it was a 10-year-old.
I think some of that goes back to like their impulse control. They
Yeah.
don't have like we have reasoning abilities, a 10-year-old doesn't, so they feel like some sort of way, especially in today's culture and society, where we're taught that feelings mean everything. Like I think they might do that, and then because they don't have the same fears that we do either.
Also-
they'll just be like, oh, well, you know what? I can't deal with this. I'm just gonna do this.
Well, that's
Yeah.
very true, but some children, especially when they're in these abusive families, they're usually afraid of everything.
Right. But what it all goes back to, go ahead, Doreen.
Social media.
That's what I was.
Yeah, in fact, I know of there's a video game,
Right.
and my granddaughter, when she was around 10 years old, she wanted to draw the girls that were on this video game. It was a video game, but she was just looking at pictures. I started scrolling down the pictures, and there were girls with knives and blood on them, and it was a suicide club. It was actually a suicide club, and the whole game was about different ones killing each other. Kids are watching this stuff, and that was 4 years ago. And it's even gotten worse. So there is such the video games and all the, like she was saying, the technology and the social media, it's horrifying.
Well, I agree all that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and just regular TV anymore.
I mean, I agree all that stuff is all over, and they have such access to it.
Yeah.
It's horrible, horrible thing, more than I could probably imagine. I'm just saying, take an individual 10-year-old, whether they're watching that stuff or not, and if they're watching that stuff, they decide that's what they're going to do. I still think with the maturity level of a 10-year-old, we all know they're influenced by their peers, is not mature enough to really say.
It's not.
You're saying you would term it as
what they're
something.
doing.
You're saying you would term it as something different than suicide.
It's not. I don't think it's a calculated.
Yeah.
It's not a
Yeah.
calculated reasoning decision. If we go back to the beginning of the definition, the feeling, what is causing that
Yeah.
with all the age groups, crossing all the barriers. It's that feeling overwhelmed and
Oh, I know.
not being able to
Right.
cope, right?
And being lonely and being isolated or being treated mean or seeing it on, yeah, I get all that. I'm just saying, I don't think a 10-year-old, and like Louise said, I don't know that it should really be classified as a suicide because a 10-year-old can barely make up their mind about anything.
I see what you're saying. You're saying the term. There's no like under the umbrella of suicide. There's not like these different categories.
No.
It's just
Yeah.
suicide. You're saying that because they
Yeah.
don't have the reasoning ability, that it's almost like it should have its own classification or whatever because
They're
it's
so young.
Yeah, I see what you're
So
saying.
young, that's all. But
Yeah.
I think.
yeah, not that it doesn't happen. You're
It's like
saying
an
it
Yeah, it
categorized.
It's like an impulse action for a lot of younger
Right.
children.
It happens, and I see a lot of reasons why, but I was just thinking, a 10-year-old kid.
You know, we probably would be shocked at what these young kids know.
Yeah.
There was just recently, my husband watches the news all day, so I hear it. But there were just recently, I think there were 3 or 4 kids involved in this murder. And the youngest kid was 6 years old that
Oh, my
committed.
Well, that's my point exactly. It's not what they're doing. They're doing the stuff. There's no doubt about it.
But their intent and their ability to like,
They're
this is
not
reason.
sure to really-
Their reasoning abilities
Yes.
aren't
Yeah.
sufficient like an adult. That's why they would be tried as a minor. They wouldn't
Yeah.
try it as an
They're
adult.
doing it,
Yeah.
definitely doing it. I agree with that.
Well, this is going right into the next topic, which the next subtitle, suicide contagion, right? An increase in suicide or suicide attempt following exposure in media or in one's own circle, right? Could possibly be said of many of the behaviors of society. So it's that exposure in the media or in your environment, right? So that includes what? The games,
Yeah.
the TV shows that are out there, what is on the internet, and there's a correlation reported between when a celebrity takes their own life or a prominent member of your community and the rise in suicide attempts.
The thing is to desensitize
Exactly.
death. People are so desensitized about it. So
Nothing shocks
it
us.
doesn't matter.
10-year-old isn't gonna
Right.
know.
And the world doesn't think that there's an afterlife, right? They think, well, this is it. My pain is over, and so it's not. So there is a rise in suicide, and while I don't know what it is that actually causes it, there is that statistical evidence that when you see it in a movie or when following their exposure, that there's a rise, right? I remember as a I don't know how old I was, if I was a teenager or an adolescent, but I remember on TV there was a show and somebody poured gasoline on the person and lit them on fire. And within the next 2 or 3 days after, there were several cases of that promoted, published in the newspaper, right? At that time, there wasn't social media. But, on the news and in the...
Right, so think of how much more now.
Yeah.
Right. It's that exposure because it's 24/7. We see today what goes on in tsunamis in India. Why do we, and the pressure of children experiencing that tragedy. I mean, we can't experience all the crises that there are worldwide. We're only able to handle so much, right? So scaling back and limiting that exposure takes some of that nervous pressure and mental anguish away from us. So we can't be involved in all that 24/7.
As terrible as a lot of these things are that they're seeing, it's interesting that we don't get it off the internet.
We don't get what off
Well, why aren't we stopping it?
Well,
We're very capable.
that comes down to actually freedom of speech and regulation,
Well,
know.
but
Yeah.
I think it's money is what it is.
Oh, yes. I mean, what does the Bible say? The love of money is the root of all evil. That's why
Yeah.
this stuff, people are getting rich off of things.
Capitalizing off of everything.
Yeah.
Anything.
That's the reason right
Yeah. So, right, where are we here? Okay, so people,
I don't know if you have any information about this, but what about those like, who believe that once they die, there'll be another life, like reincarnation? What about those people? Is there any kind of suicide?
I imagine there is, but I didn't come across that.
I just wondered because someone like that would, they would think, oh, well.
It's better in the next life.
Yeah.
No, because I think that there's ways that you have to like live your life
Oh, true.
and stuff like that,
That's
so I wouldn't
true, yeah.
consider
Well, in
coming back as a fly. Yeah.
right, that's in the
Yeah.
I mean, really though.
right. That's like a religious belief in India, right? That if you don't live a certain way, you either evolve to a higher caste or you come down to a lower one.
Some churches believe that you should commit suicide, like the Twin Towers when those people.
Oh, right, right, because you're going to get a reward in their heaven.
Yeah, they're doing it for.
there's a cause.
virgins waiting on them.
Right, and that in that type of scenario, the mental health industry does not consider that as a technical suicide in that DSM criteria, the diagnostic manual, because for a religious or political, martyrdom, is not considered in the scope of suicide. So, when we get influenced by actor and sports figures and public figures, so it gets heightened in our mind. So another word for suicide contagion is copycat, right?
Yeah.
And vulnerable individuals, including adolescents, and those who are struggling with their thoughts, or people with mental health conditions, are inclined to succumb to these kind of things. So in like answering that, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention issued guidelines to the media to list resources when they do report on something, an event like that, resources, mental health resources to help people with thoughts about taking their life. And also, which they don't always, of course, follow these guidelines, right? Because media wants sensationalism to sell papers, or, well, not newspapers anymore, but to get their likes or whatever, you know, or to make their money and get more subscriptions. To not detail the methods of the suicide, and not indicating it was just a simple motive or reason, you know, to downplay what the underlying motive reason was, and not to talk about doing it for fame or revenge. And, you know, because you get your notoriety, right? Kids like the notoriety. We all want to be noticed, right? And an interesting thing is revenge. How many have ever thought of people killing themselves, taking their lives to get even with somebody?
And for attention.
Right, that's part of the fame thing, but to get back at your,
Actually, gonna kill myself.
yeah, something like that. And it's, we've known personally people whose child, as an act of anger and defiance to their parents.
The boy from Oxford, that killed the Oxford kids.
That was the same thing?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was like the same thing for him to get
Okay.
attention, because his parents did not feel him.
Yeah, so, I mean, we as Christians, people of faith, we can see the importance of a solid family foundation, right? That structure is deteriorated
Yes.
exponentially over the last 50 years. So, you know, people don't have that support. They don't have that foundation. I mean, you don't have your grandparents helping your family, right? You don't have your mom didn't have your grandparents, and you don't have your grandparents and your parents to help you with your family. So it's a lot difficult. It is difficult. Okay. Medication and the suicide risks. Antidepressants are generally thought to be safe, but the Food and Drug Administration requires what's called a black box or a box warning, which is the strongest prescription drug warning on them, saying that there could be a percentage of side effect of suicidal thoughts. So some children and teenagers or people under 25 could experience an increase of suicidal thoughts or behavior while taking certain antidepressants. And it's generally shortly after they've started that, or there's an increase in their dosage. Okay. And this is, it's theorized that even a low increase in energy and motivation before depressive symptoms disappear from the antidepressants, because it makes you feel freer, gives them enough boost in energy to act on the impulses. So if you're generally walking in a depressed state, you don't have that motivation, but when you get that jolt of that medication, then you're like revived, and you can, I can do it. I have that but you know, in the long run, it says that antidepressants are generally considered to help improve moods and reduce the risk of suicide. But again, when you're having that initial influx of the medication, it does kind of remove some of that doldrum. Okay. Warning signs. Okay, so this is important. Okay, how, you know, we may know someone who has taken their lives, and you think, well, today we were with them, and tomorrow they did something, and I couldn't tell. Okay, she didn't come today, but this one lady that I know, her ex-husband took his own life, and the day before he did it, she said that a pastor talked him out of it. Okay, well, he evidently didn't talk him out of it, but she thought that they did, right? So it's like you think that something, but there's still that underlying.
That's actually pretty common. That because when you've decided you have peace, so then the outward appearance is that they're okay, and they are, but it's not because they decide they're not going to. It's because they decide they're going to.
Right. Yeah. So one of the warning signs is talking about suicide. Okay. Another, it says getting the means to take your own life. I'm just making the list and then we'll go over it. So talking about suicide, getting a way to do it, stockpiling drugs, or getting a weapon, withdrawing from social contact, okay, and mood swings. So those are major warning signs, which maybe by themselves don't mean a thing, but when you clump them together, that's like increases the red flags, right? So the warnings may not be obvious, and they can vary from person to person, especially depending on their personality, if they're more expressive or whatever. But saying things like, I wish I were dead, I wish I hadn't been born, or being preoccupied with death and dying and violence, like these children are, and people playing a lot of these video games, right? That's the main theme. If it's not sex, right, it's killing and death, right? And there is this attraction about death, apparently, but it's subtle, I'm just tired of living. I could say this today, right? And if I said that because I'm just tired of it, God take me, I'm ready to go, right? Sometimes we are, and that's okay, in our time we are going, but but when you again clump it together, but then making a comment, you'd be surprised how many people have said something and we didn't catch it. Okay, so getting the means to end your life, like I started to say, stockpiling your medications, right? If you see people that are in a depressed state, and they may not, if they're making a plan, right, you're going to get the stuff together to fulfill your plans. But if you just happen to have extra medication from being hospitalized, and then you are overwhelmed, or it's there, you have the means and opportunity, then it's more facilitates completing the act, right? Withdrawing, wanting to be left alone, or isolating themselves. Okay, I mean, when you're not happy and you're overwhelmed, you don't want to be around people. And it's, well, how can you be? Don't want to go to a birthday party and be, it's more like salt in the wound when I'm feeling crummy. But you want to get away from people. Your moods, okay, mood swings. You're emotionally high one day and deeply discouraged the next. When you feel trapped about a situation or hopeless. Personality changes, especially together with the other warning signs. You're anxious. Today there's so much anxiety, right? In agitated states. So, I mean, we can, there's the scripture in Psalm 46:10 that says, be still and know that I'm God, right? We get that inner peace from, and knowing that he is.
It's right there. Be still and know that I'm God.
Oh.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's behind me. I didn't see it. But that is it. Let him be God in our lives. So we can take some of these things to help deal with our own emotional turbulence, right? It doesn't have to be to the extent of suicide or any other kind of depression. We be still and know that I'm God. But we have these ups and downs today. And so when your personality change together with other indications is a warning sign, or you're suddenly very happy because as it was made a comment, you've made the decision to end your life, that it's going to be over. So now I'm relieved. Okay, if you notice a change in alcohol or drug use. You're doing more destructive things like driving recklessly, or some of these, sports that are extreme sports, or a change in your normal routine, like eating or sleeping, or taking care of yourself. Taking care of yourself, like showering, right? Or wearing clean clothes. If you see someone giving away belongings, okay, now some of us, and spring cleaning, we want to just get rid of the clutter. That's not it, okay? But they start giving away keepsakes, and getting what you call getting your affairs in order, right? We've seen movies and TV shows about that, where they just get things organized. They got their bank account thing. Here's my, so if I'm telling you, here's my funeral arrangements and my passcodes to my bank account and that kind of stuff, it's like, is it just so that I'm thinking, well, I had a serious accident, so I want you to be prepared, or am I getting, in case something happens, or am I trying to plan something to say goodbye? I'm saying goodbye to you like you're never going to be seen again. All right. I don't know if you've ever had that feeling. I mean, when someone moves far away, that's kind of normal, right? Any comments or questions before we jump into the next section? So there will be a recording of this, and I can, when I upload it, give you the link.
Margot.
Yes, ma'am?
Yes, I just want to say that my cousin, he committed suicide. He jumped off the Belle Isle Bridge around, let's say, 15 years ago. He was in the Air Force, and when he found out that his mother passed away, he couldn't come home right away to to attend her funeral, and so he ended up getting an early release from the Air Force. He came home. He was okay for a while, but then he never was able to forgive himself that he wasn't here with her. He would just start spiraling down. He was on medication. He stayed with my mother and father for a while. He was working and doing really good, going to school, college, and everything. And he was like the president, and he was doing so well. All of a sudden, he just starts spiraling down. And I think he never forgave himself for not being here. And then he just got on medication. We helped moved him into a three-way house and helped support him and gave him all his needs. And then he just one day, we got that phone call that he jumped over the Belle Isle Bridge.
Yeah, and veterans, have a high rate of suicide too, as well as the LGBT community. Okay. Anything else before I go on to myths and facts? Okay, this is kind of a short section, but myths and facts. Yeah. So it's more common not to reach out than for somebody to reach out, right? Mm-hmm. Just in general. Okay, there's a shame and there's a stigma. But there's also that once I've made a decision, I want to keep it secret because I don't want to be stopped. Okay, so the assumption is that if a person has attempted a failed attempt, that the person is not serious about ending their lives. Okay, but the belief is they believe it's to get attention, but that an individual needs backing or assistance, and it should be taken seriously, right? So even if you think that someone's just trying to get attention, but because I haven't been able to complete the act does not mean that I wasn't serious about ending my life. Okay, so one of the myths from one of the medical sites, people who talk about suicide are not serious and won't go through with it. The fact is, people that have attempted to take their own life have often said that life is not worth living and that they want to die. So we just didn't pick it up. Okay. While talking about it may be a call for help, it is important to take a person seriously, because when they're feeling hopeless, it's part of our support to undergird them in their emotional needs. So somebody might just say casually, but somebody might and not really think that that's the avenue that they want to take, but we need to see it as a call for help and to take them seriously and help them get the support that they need, make connections, right? By having that support and getting them connected, you can save a life, right? A common myth is if a person is serious about killing themselves, there's nothing you can do to stop them. And the fact is, feeling actively suicidal is a temporary condition, right? I'm not actively moving in that direction all the time. I'm feeling like I would like to get out of here. Actively, we talked about it at the very beginning, right, is making a plan and intending to implement it. So that's that overwhelming, all right, I'm going to do it, I've had enough. It's that the word overwhelm is really, I think, very key in that. But you don't feel overwhelmed 24/7, right? There's, in our emotions, there's peaks and there's valleys. So when we're at the peak is when we're feeling the worst, but we might not be actively pursuing that. Go ahead.
The girl who, this is on TV, girl who, what do you want to call it? Initiated the boy to kill himself. She has 4
Oh, yeah.
Kind of provoked him. Yeah.
How would you categorize that?
The person that actually bullying, or was it suggestion? I'm not.
Both. It was both. He had to have mental problems to be able to be influence that strongly.
Well, there is a peer thing. You want your approval, and so you subject yourself to a lot of stuff to be part of the group. And somebody is that cruel. I mean, that's that numbness that someone brought up, right? You're not that. I mean, if you really had a realization of what that was, what death is, and you're just kind of oblivious to people's main mental condition. So if you're talking about the boy that died or the person that provoked him, well, categorizing both. Well, I mean, technically, I would say that female could be charged with that minimum manslaughter, right?
You charged her with something and think at one time, and I don't know what ever happened.
Of course, hey,
Right.
Yeah.
I never found out what happened.
I don't know.
That was her boyfriend, right? Her ex-boyfriend.
So we talked about in some of the warning signs and the tendencies, that what is it that motivates us? When you're, you want to get out from underneath it, or you're influenced by someone's suggestion, whether it's that repeated aggression against you, because we said if you're a victim of bullying or discrimination, there's these feelings of hopelessness, and that influences us. So, I mean, it's very sad that somebody could be so callous and insensitive to
Do something.
Right. Right. Okay. So going back, so the active feeling of reaching out and moving in that area is temporary. So even if somebody is struggling for a long time or feeling low, it's the active part. If you're living in a depressive state, you're not always 24/7 in that heightened state where you just are ready to take the plunge, right? Suicidal people want to die. The majority of the majority of people who feel suicidal do not want to live the life they are living now. They want to live a different life. It's not that they actually want to die. They don't like, we don't like, right? We don't like, how many of we say, I hate my life? Once in a while in our 25 years, right? We've said that. But they want the escape, right? You want to get out from under, and it's an option. There are other avenues of relief. There are other avenues. There are other solutions. So talking about the options that are open to people is important. Give them the support and show them the different ways out, right? And we know that, God makes all things possible. So, I mean, there are suicidal tendencies and thoughts and actions in faith communities, right? But it's our belief in God that there's something better on the other side of that. We have this tunnel vision. All we can see is this, but we don't see God's greater plan for 10 minutes from now, or a year from now, or 20 years from now.
That's true.
And helping say, we don't want to be trite about it, but there is something. So in some of the different techniques that talk about, making plans, and we'll get to that. I don't want to jump, because then I'll be all over the place, okay? A myth. An individual's sudden improvement in mental state, we talked about this, following a suicidal crisis or depressive state indicates the risk is past. And we already mentioned this in our conversation. The fact is, the opposite is most likely true, right? Of course, if you've attempted to take your own life and have had therapy and are getting treatment in that area, then there is a progressive bettering of our outlook, so it's not, just.
Open. I gotta, if somebody comes to the door, okay, I'll leave it like that.
I can't hear you, sorry.
Man who familiar there,
Yeah, that's
Go back in my seat.
like Elon Musk.
and then Robin Williams.
Right.
Yeah, sure, he got to do some therapy.
I didn't touch it, the window.
Right. Well, that's kind of like drug rehabilitation, right? You go through a program, and you have to have support and continue in those new living behaviors, right?
You can't change someone's mind, it's their heart.
Right. And, we have to understand God gave us emotions. He gave us emotions for a good cause. He gave us emotions and feelings to enjoy the creation that he has offered us. But when we go back to the enemy, what does he want? He wants to abuse those emotions. He doesn't want us to enjoy the beautiful blossoming flowers of spring. He wants you to focus on the dull, rainy clouds.
Because he hates God and hates God people.
Right. I mean, he's trying to damage us because we are created in his image. And unfortunately, even in our daily lives, we lose sight of that.
Right.
I may not like my weight or, my voice or whatever, but, God designed me and he's pleased with me the way I am.
That's right.
Where society's image of beautiful and good and talented it changes, but God's image of us never changes, and God never changes, and we're made in his image. And so each person that we deal with is valuable, and reinforcing that we are valuable, if only because God created us, right? So, okay, so we're going to their improvement after a suicide crisis indicates the risk is past. The opposite is most likely true. In the 3 months following, the individual is most at risk. Okay, the decision could have been made to die by suicide, making them feel better that pain is going to be over. So they're looking to be over. We just want to be done with it. All right, this myth is, I take a little bit of exception to it. Suicide is selfish. Okay. Now, The mental health community says, while it may appear that the person is not taking into consideration the impact on the family and loved ones, there is much evidence to the contrary. Okay, so what they're saying when they say that it's not selfish is the fact that they feel like their friends and relatives will be better off without them. Okay, but that's a distorted belief. They feel like they're maybe lessening their burden on their family and friends by not being around. Now, my personal, okay, let's continue with that. While the individual may believe others are better off, I personally qualify this statement, because when you're thinking about your relieving of your plans, you are thinking about yourself, right? So to me, it's not totally that, you know, they're not being selfish. There is a self-interest quality, but they are thinking about that. Oh, you'd be better off without me, right? Right. I mean, they have their black and white, and I have my black and white and gray. So, let me see. All right. Treatment. Treatment depends on the situation and level of risk. Okay. Underlying problems and the causing suicidal risk or depression. So if there's emergency treatment. If someone is at immediate risk of harming themselves or an attempt at suicide, you want to call 911 or an emergency number. You want to intervene. You want to get the dangerous stuff away from them, okay? The emergency room will treat for injuries. The doctors will ask questions or to determine recent or past signs of the suicide attempt. They may do an examination. They may need medication. So if they go to in an urgent situation or otherwise for therapy, a medical person may prescribe medication to help balance out some of the moods and feelings. They may want the individual to stay in the hospital to evaluate if the treatment is working or to make sure that the patient is safe. If they think that just giving them the medication or interrupting the event and they feel like, oh, there's a risk that they're going to continue, they might hospitalize the person. In our area, they can hold you for I think 72 hours to evaluate you and determine whether you need to be hospitalized or whether you should be safe to go home. A non-emergency or outpatient treatment, there's psychotherapy, medication, and a great source is helplines, right? Finding a therapist, you explore issues that may help them learn why do they feel that way, right? It's the issues. To help them learn skills how to manage their emotions and develop, they're trained to help you develop a plan of treatment and goals, all right? A variety of medications can help reduce the symptoms, the emotional mood swings. Helplines and listening services, talking to us, acknowledging our pain and what we're going through. Listening, being listened to is tremendous. They also provide resources, and they're available and accessible, right? If you're there, you can call these numbers 24/7. So we talked about the 988 national number for suicide prevention. Also 1-800-273-TALK, TALK on the dial, which is 8255. The Macomb County Crisis Center hotline I've got that number, 586-307-9100. Okay, so they'll talk to you or text you. They're trained volunteers. They'll help support. They'll talk through and figure out what's going on, right? Sometimes we're blind as to why we feel what's going on, why we feel that way. Wanting to find out why they feel that this is an option, the individual, and they'll help you form a plan. They might bring in someone else that the person can call, and if it's urgent, they'll encourage them to go to emergency services or contact the local emergency services. And when you go to these helplines, nobody's going to show up at your doorstep, and take you away to an institution. Yeah. There's a procedure, right, to commit someone to a unit.
Although sometimes that's not you.
Oh, yeah. Right.
That leaves the person still out there, so to speak.
Right. Well, so that when you're talking about that, Anna, you're talking about assessing the risk, right? When we're looking at person, we have to see, is there an immediate, can we see an immediate risk that they're going to do something imminently, right? And so hopefully they're trained better than us to evaluate that.
So sad. It's just a case of this young lady threatening to kill her child with a knife. They went and they assessed the situation and everything. And later she kills her baby.
Yeah.
The system does not always know.
Right. Well, in that particular case, when we're talking about helping with treatments and things, friends and relatives, we can help encourage the people to get help, to go to appointments, to follow up with the treatment. And so, but in general, the people that volunteer or are working on these lines are individuals that care, right? It's not just a job. I mean, there's other mental health or counseling jobs you can get, but should be a lack of judgment and letting the people know that suicide is not their only option. That is an option. Obviously, it's a choice, right? But there are other avenues, and that's part of that instilling hope. So, helping people to cope, us learning to cope, right? There's the coping right now. If you are in a suicidal episode, right? And what do you do right now if that risk is imminent? Get safe immediately, right? Get away from the bridge. Get rid of the gun. Put the knife away. Flush the pills down, okay? Distract yourself. Something else to make you think of not your situation, and challenge your thoughts. Okay, so in extreme feelings, they feel like they won't pass, but they will, right? So it's when you're doing it right away, stopping that momentary or temporary, it feels like, could be 5 minutes, can feel like a lifetime, right? But it can't last forever. So if that active intent to put it on the back burner somehow. So it takes steps to stop yourself by taking action. Call 911 or emergency services, okay? You can get safe by taking it 5 minutes at a time. I think these are very practical steps. I didn't come up with them, so I won't take credit. But in that 5 minutes, get through 5 minutes, and you do it a minute by minute, right? We talked about removing the harmful objects. Form a safety plan. So having a safety plan when you are facing this event is helpful. And tell somebody, all right? If you're able to get through the next or the first 5 minutes, reward yourself, okay? I'm going to have an ice cream, right? I'm just going to get this. I'm going to drink a cup of coffee with my favorite creamer. I'm going to breathe. All right. So we eliminate objects that could be used or to harm ourselves, or ask somebody else to do it. Get ourselves into out of an unsafe location and move to a safer one. It's like in domestic violence too, right? You're not going to stay there. You get out of the situation. Forming safety plans, and there'll be a little bit more details to follow later in a few more minutes. Ideas to help yourself when you feel unwell. And I have in parentheses here, prepared, right? You form something prior, a strategy prior to the emotional of the moment. right? So it's hard to think of some kind of steps to take when you're right there. But help. Reach out and tell a family member. Talk to your friends. If you have pets, talk to your pet. All right? Your pet would not be the same if you're not there. They're not going to understand why, what happened to you, but you matter to your pet, right? We can talk to God. We can call on a crisis line, but feeling less alone and out of control, right? In distracting ourselves, this is a very interesting concept. Focus on your 5 senses. Look after your needs. Go outside. Contact a crisis line. Okay? In focusing on your 5 senses, concentrate on what you're feeling, hearing, tasting, touching. Thinking about 5 things that you can smell.
I actually have a handout that has that. Like you can carry it with you, depending because it's like 5 things you hear, 4 things you see.
Yeah. I have
It's called a grounding technique.
Right, exactly. So I don't know if there's a specific order that they recommend, but I just wrote them down like this, like 5 things you can smell. The garbage, you know, that's not a good thing, but a flower, your favorite spaghetti sauce, right? 5 things you can smell, 4 things you can taste. You know, like that cup of good coffee, your favorite coffee, or a chocolate. Hearing things, 3 things. What 3 things can I hear? Oh, that bird, that happy bird sound in the spring. You know, Christmas songs. You know, some people like the sound of rain. Touching. Well, it could be prickly porcupine. You know, you're contacting something physical. Your
Just so
body.
you know, too, it can be used like it doesn't have to be like you imagining something or anything. I'd actually be pretty surprised if you just stopped, like even taste the cracker you just ate. The
Right.
coffee, the lot, the toothpaste, like they're
Right.
it's in the moment, like that you even like I'm sitting on a hard chair, I can
Feel
my jacket, I can feel my hair in my face, like those.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be like, oh, I have to go look for things. You literally can be anywhere. I actually use this technique a lot, just in general, and also with my clients and stuff like that.
Right.
You would
I mean,
be really surprised.
even that yucky horse mouth taste on your tongue, you know, because why? You're getting away from that feeling and you're focusing on something that's tangible. Okay. Right. It says grounding in the moment. So what can you see? You know, looking at you see a flower, but look at the nuances of the changing colors and enjoy it. You know, physical needs. You need water. Take a drink of water. Get something to eat, whether it's salty, sweet, crunchy. Do not take drugs or alcohol. That will make you feel worse and more impulsive. When you're going outside, if it's cold, feeling the wind blowing on you. Again, this is what you're talking about, physical experience, right?
The distraction? Are they distracted
Um,
or no?
yeah, because what it's doing is it's
Taking you away from the
Pulling you
problem.
away from.
right. It's getting your concentration right, and it's not like sitting down and watching the TV and just like it's entering into, you know.
You can take a hot shower or a bath.
Yeah. So, I mean, feeling the rain on you, the cold, or it's cold rain that's good or cold rain that's refreshing on a hot day. The wind, the snow, you're getting more connected to your body. Calling and talking to somebody, okay? So challenge your thoughts. Make a deal with yourself. Find a reason. Okay, I'm not going to act on this today. I'm going to find support. reasons to live, something you're looking forward to, even if it's the next episode of your favorite show, or I'm going to go get to see my best friend from high school, or eating a food, like getting an ice cream cone, or, I'm going to make plans. Tomorrow I'm going to go do this. It doesn't have to be big or expensive, but something in the near future. I'm going to go to the park. I'm going to go sit by the lake. Okay. Think of how the people you love will miss you, or how your pet will miss you. Somebody is going to, you can get morose about this and think that nobody is going to miss you, but that's part of that cycle, right? Your child, your grandchild, they won't know why you did this. It'll be confusing. And as far as coping in the long term, we're going to talk about making a safety plan, valuing yourself, or connecting with others, okay? Before I forget, as far as, because I had it up higher in my notes, and your physical health, focus on your physical health in the long run. I didn't move it from cut and paste it into this section, but it talked about if you have a relationship, like if you're engaged or something, should you tell somebody about past experiences or attitudes or attempts or thoughts about suicide? But why it's helpful to do that is because that person will know what to look for in your future, right? If people around us often see warning signs, what we're going through, when we're blind to it, right? It's like my little granddaughter. She doesn't see that. She's standing on the chair and she's this close to falling off because her heel is off of there, right? But I can see that. And so it's not whether the person is entitled to know or has a right to know about some of your past problems, but it's giving them the equipment to help you and support you in these future decisions. So I wanted to say that because it's not written here and I don't want to forget. Okay. So talking about a safety plan. A safety plan is a plan to support you at a time when you may be thinking about taking your life. You make it when you're thinking clearly, or you help somebody make it when they're thinking, when they're not in that grip of that feeling right now. So you can make it with a friend. It includes how to recognize your warning signs. Details on personal coping strategies, okay? Different things that we do to get through. Some people like to journal. I don't do that. I mean, I write down when I feel like God is highlighting something in my life, or if I pray for something, and God's answered, so that I can look back. But I'm not one of these people that, listens to notes when I pray or read. I'm not writing it all down. But that's a technique. That's something that helps you cope. Talking to somebody or going for a walk. All right. You want names and contact info on people who could help you when you're in that crisis state. Mm-hmm. So you have this written down so that you have like a manual, what you can do. All right. Make sure that these people know that they're in your plan. Right. If I'm in a crisis, I'm going to call you. Right. And you're going to write these things down, and you're going to give, if you have a therapist, your BFF, the person in your crisis, in your safety plan, you're going to make them have a copy. Have somebody help you if you have a therapist or medical professional. Make sure they know you're in your plan, so they know and they answer. Professionals and agencies to contact, right? When you're in the moment, you don't need to be looking up your doctor. Have it right there and have it available. The hotlines to contact. Steps to make your immediate environment safe, right? Know if I am walking somewhere and I'm feeling bad, where can I go to, if you're on the Belle Isle Bridge, right? Yeah. All right, get off the bridge, but not in the water. Walk off the bridge, right? Go to a place where it's safe. If you have in front of a lion in the jungle, you're not just going to hang out there, right? You're going to go somewhere where he's not going get you. So where's a place you feel safe? Where's a place you feel comfortable? Do you like a particular park, right? Do you like to drive around and see the pretty houses in Grosse Pointe? So things that are meaningful to you. Give copies to your support people. So you have strategies that work for you, or you help your friend make strategies, things that are important to them. Value yourself. Write a letter, make plans, celebrate yourself, do things you enjoy. In the letter, write happy memories. I remember this Thanksgiving at my grandmother's house, and the fireplace was going, and this person and that person were playing old, American songs, from their whatever, when they were kids or whatever, and it was so comfy and cozy and warm. Or a letter about people who care about you, things that you like. Make plans, right? Plans. Look, a concert, going to a play, going to a ball game, planning a vacation, celebrating yourself, right? So making plans, it could be just tomorrow I'm going to go to the grocery store and buy some shrimp, right? We all have things to celebrate ourselves. We all have moments that we achieve something that are meaningful to us, or, learning to play a song on an instrument when you were able to do that. What you like about yourself, not what you don't like about yourself. Not that you don't like your curved up toes, but something that you like. Does that mean something to you? I was just thinking,
That's okay.
we have just different physical characteristics. That's like, we want to hide this, so we wear long, baggy things so that people don't see our big something. But what is it? God created us, right?
God loves us anyway.
Yeah, and that's not what matters. But I like my laugh. I like my sense of humor. I like my creativity. I like when my nails are painted, right? And note compliments. When somebody has said, you did this well, or something that did something for you. A few years ago, somebody from church, on my birthday, was making my favorite cake. And he brought me a piece on that day. So I took a picture of it, and it's a screensaver on one of my computer screens, right? What is the odds of that, right? Just something that, yeah, somebody, my favorite cake, what is the odds of that somebody's good, and on my birthday, so I can look back at that. Somebody's thinking about me, somebody thought about me outside of my normal day-to-day routine. That wasn't just someone be in my house bringing me my coffee, which is nice, but, so noting compliments. Do things you enjoy. Do you like to get your nails done? Some people like a massage, okay? Some people like to read. Some people like to play golf. Do things that you enjoy. Okay, and another thing is to connect with others. We need to seek support. We need to talk to people and have people that are there for us. And we feel like maybe we don't, and people don't understand. But some of us have grandchildren. Some of us have parents, people that are there for us. Another thing is volunteering. All right. It's rewarding to give back. I always think that, it's not about me meeting my needs, but when I'm giving to somebody else, it builds up my confidence. It makes me feel good to be appreciated for helping, right? And it's not selfish to give and get something back, right?
That's right.
The law of sowing and reaping, right? when you're talking about support, let people know how you're feeling. Let them know what's helpful or difficult, right? If a certain phrase doesn't mean anything to you, and they keep using it to try to show their interest, tell them, this is not. But ask others to be with you if it's needed. Peer support. Now, peer support isn't like our friends. It's not like our other chaplains, but it's somebody that's gone through the same thing, right? You have, if you're a cancer survivor, right? Your peers would be somebody else that has also, right, who survives cancer. So it's when you have people with similar experiences, you can share and identify, and you can get tips and feedback on how they handle different situations. So we absolutely need to concentrate on our physical health, right? We, as Christians, we often neglect the body and think that the most important thing is spiritual. Well, obviously we know the spirit lasts forever and this body is going to decay. But in the meantime, if I'm feeling pain, if I'm feeling tired, I'm not at my best. I can't fight these thoughts that are coming against me, right? So one of the most important things is sleep. We need to be able to get rest. If we're not getting rest, a consistent amount and a deep enough sleep, then, as she's yawning at me over there, you don't have that restoring and refresh. When we're sleeping, our body is rebuilding itself. Our cells are being replenished and restored. Our mind isn't racing, even if we're dreaming, right? The way it is when we're active. So we need to have quality sleep. We need to avoid drugs and alcohol, which, whether you enjoy it or not, there's nothing good about it for your body, right? So I would put a healthy diet. I might like chocolate, but the sugar is not going to nourish my body. So I need to be eating a balanced diet. Physical activity, okay? We all know we need to move. If you don't, you're gonna, move it or lose it, right? Okay. So, yeah, very bad.
It sounds like someone's writing.
Maybe. We need to have our bodies moving. So if you guys remember back to the 15 minutes of energy, right? Not saying, oh, this is. Yeah. 15 minutes of energy. We don't need to be doing, jogging on the treadmill for 15 minutes. We can be walking around. We can be swinging our arms. Depending on your physical capacities, right? You might just be shuffling from somewhere or wiggling your fingers, right?
Ride a bike.
Ride a bike. Yep. So we need to learn to relax before bedtime, to have a bedtime routine. We have these screens in front of our face and we're watching TV from our bed. That light isn't good.
Bad thing to do.
It is a bad thing to do. But it doesn't, because it activates stimulation. And you just hear it. Okay, that's a different thing. But so that as you're preparing for bed, right, your body is winding down. One of the people in the chaplaincy group one time said it took them an hour and a half to wind down after the day to go to bed. So, when I'm preparing for bed, I'm doing this, I might stop the screens, read a book, listen to some music, then you're going, well, this is what I do. I'm going to brush my teeth, I'm going to wash my face, or take your shower or whatever. And then that it's like you're training your children. You do this kind of thing, you read the bedtime story, you pray, you get in the bed, and you go, hopefully. Okay. The drugs and alcohol put you at a higher risk. There's an illusion of help, right? Regular meals, you got to keep your blood sugar stable, and it helps with moods. And we know that when we're doing physical exercise, it releases hormones and it makes you feel better. Now this is the thing that made me think about Madeline, because there was a question in the class that I was in about, you know, some people take a shower and it makes them feel better. But the thing about, we have like an energy bank, like a reservoir of energy. And there's certain things and activities that we do that add to our energy level. And there's certain things that take away from our energy level. So for some people, taking a shower is draining. And for some people, taking a shower is invigorating, right? So if you're already feeling low and it's taking too much of an energy, depleting your energy and your mental outlook to take a shower, but you still need to take care of yourself, it's do something lesser, like washing your hands or washing your face or brushing your teeth. So instead of doing a whole activity, you're doing a smaller bite. And so it's not diminishing that energy level, that motivation level, okay? And another thing is saying, I should do this. I should mow the lawn. I should make a sandwich. I should do that. Should leans toward guilt and shame. So let's not say I should be doing this. I should call the doctor. I should whatever about it. But do I want to? No. Do I need to? Yes or no. If I need to do something, then take a small increment of activity. So what made me think about Madeline was she was talking a couple months ago about a person that she helps every week who has no motivation, and she wanted to motivate the person.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so this is an example of how we're continuing to get answers, right? So I was thinking about this lady, and one of the problems with this person is that an adult child had died, right? And she was talking about the person not having the grieving and not having the energy or motivation, right, to go to the cemetery and bring some flowers or whatever. So I was thinking today, actually, as I was trying to get things ready today about it, not earlier preparing, and I was thinking, well, what does this person, we'll just call her Agnes, right? I don't know what the person's name is, but what gives Agnes a deposit in her energy, right? She loved her child. I think it was a daughter, right? So could Madeline get an object from the view of her window, or with Agnes, go out, somebody must be in the building, go out to have an object in the yard to be kind of like a memorial, right? A statue, a stone, or whatever. And Agnes or Madeline in front of her from the window could put a bouquet of flowers or a pot at that part in her yard from the window. Or if she liked birds, to have a bird feeder by the window, right? Or squirrels. I don't like squirrels, but they eat stuff in my yard and yell at me. I don't like them, but but if you have something like to feed the squirrels or birds, right? I'd said birds, but like you throw stuff on the ground. So something by the window. So to start out with the person, she has a small energy level, a small motivation level. So what could she, like I talked about, Madeline could take this out in her presence and deposit something to give her a jolt, right? And then maybe eventually once a week, she could try to say, well, come on out and feed the birds with me. Or, you know what I'm saying? So that's just a small thing that this person could do, but it's finding something to deposit and increase that energy rather than depleting the energy. So This is lasting longer than I thought, but that's okay. I'm almost done here. I'm almost done, yeah. So that was very instructive to me about different things to help us, positive things we can do to boost us rather than tear us down. If anybody has to go, feel free. You don't have to stick around for this last couple paragraphs. Helping others. Okay, we talked about reaching out. When we're reaching out to help others, we need to be direct. We're assessing the risks. We need to be around. We don't just pop in and zip out. We need to listen, and we need to help them with their therapy needs, right? So when you know someone is struggling and you fear that they may be considering suicide, we talked about reach out. You may be awkward, but check in. I was thinking about you today. How's it going? Show that you care and ask. We talked about using the word suicide, right? Are you having suicidal thoughts? Are you feeling alone? People, when we're talking, we need to be direct. People are afraid to talk about this topic because they don't want to put the idea in the people's head. But as we mentioned before, that's not supported by any research, okay? So we need to directly confront and say things to people, whether it's about this issue or whether it's about their drug use. And assessing the risk, we're talking about if there's an immediate need or not. Could someone get me a little bit? Oh, I have still a little bit. Hold on. Could you? Oh, appreciate it. I'm getting dry here. Thank you, Linda.
You're welcome.
Okay, if a loved one or a friend has confided that they've considered suicide, it's not a panic issue, right? We can discuss it compassionately and directly with them, that we understand that their needs. We understand what they're going through. And I said understand to somebody one time, and it wasn't saying I know what you're going through. Because I don't know what you're going through. It's not identical. Thank you. But I've, like Jesus, he was touched with the feeling of my infirmities. We've all experienced pain. None of us likes it, right? If we do, then we have to do the later thing, find a therapist, right? But not everyone needs to go to the hospital because they've considered ending their life. Are they going to act today? Are they acting tomorrow? Okay. Are they thinking about tomorrow? Do they have a plan? Okay. Yes. If it's yes, there's a high risk, and then you have to do something about it. 38% of people with a plan to end their life implement the plan, right? 38. Okay. So we need to be around for the long run, right? After we assess the risk, is there an immediate crisis or not? So be validating and gentle. Don't leave them alone. Remove items that could be used to harm themselves. All right, the kitchen knives, razors, cleaning products that are poisonous, right? One of the best tools we have as chaplains is listening. Sometimes I'm just looking. I'm trying to. I'm not saying. I'm telling you, you're not listening.
No, because I talk too much.
That's your own self-conviction. I'm not judging you there, right?
I accept that.
But you know, so many times you go to talk to somebody and they're trying to tell you what's going on, or they're trying to answer your question. They're trying to tell you what to do, and they haven't even their mouth long enough to hear what you're saying. What is it that's bothering you? You know, what's going on? So, and we're listening in an open and non-judgmental way. Sometimes that's hard, but okay. Offering hope. Say things like, I know how strong you are, or I've seen you go through such and such. You've gotten through that, and we can get through this together, right? We can get through this. You're not by yourself. And let's come up with a solution, okay? Christians have a problem with counseling, with psychology, because so much of it is anti-biblical. But there are Christian counselors, and there are techniques or steps or things that they've learned to help us cope and manage, right? So in order to help prevent a future conflict or crisis, help connect them to a mental health professional.
Yes.
Right? Because as I mentioned, unless you're trained, you can be opening yourself up to liability, right? Taking the responsibility. I don't want to take it on myself that I'm the one that's answering and they don't do what I tried to help them with, and I'm responsible for them losing their life. Because I took it on myself because I'm the big, Christian counselor. I know what's going on. I don't have any kind of certificate of training or degree as a suicide specialist, right? I mentioned in the class on laws the other day with the chaplain group about a military chaplain who had experienced temptations to end in regards to suicidal thoughts, okay? And he was sharing it, this was several years ago, sharing it with the, other people in his battalion or whatever unit he had. And because he didn't have accredited training and a certificate as a suicide counseling expert, he got reprimanded for sharing what he used as a Christian to manage that situation. So that's a unfair experience that he had, but it is an example how we can take things, the society only recognizes the experts, and we could be legally liable for taking too much upon ourselves and not recommending, right? It's true. We're not recommending professional help.
Right. He was just giving his testimony, really.
Right. Just like you and I talking and sharing and he's providing the support as a military chaplain.
Right.
But he got reprimanded and it's on his record.
Oh, wow.
I don't know if it ever got removed.
Right.
But so in order to prevent that, we want to help them find a therapist, because therapy, there is training that these people have gone to and paid for to help manage different situations. And that's the whole key, is right, managing these emotion swings and that moment. So help them to get an appointment. Many don't even make one, right? And many, if they make one and go to their first appointment, don't return. So we want maybe to offer to drive them, right? If they need medication, these therapists can prescribe medication and help them, give them techniques to manage their moods. So that's basically all that I have for today. I think it's quite a lot, actually. And so this is being recorded, so I will put it up.